welcome to this episode of The Silicon Grapevine. I'm your host, Nitin Darhad. On today's episode, I'll be chatting to Mike Noonen, CEO of Swave Photonics. Mike is an interesting personality in that he's a serial entrepreneur, but he's also super connected and a super connector. So how did a kid from Colorado get to be a Silicon Valley entrepreneur? We chat about that journey, his current company, the formation of Silicon Catalyst, and his philosophy as an entrepreneur. Let's go to what Mike had to say. Mike, hello.
Nitin, hello, and a pleasure to be with you today.
Good. So tell me a little bit about what you're doing right now, and then we'll talk a little bit about your journey into the industry and some of the exciting things you've been doing.
Sure thing. So, my latest venture and what I'm doing right now is I'm the CEO of Swave Photonics, which is a fantastic company that's a spin-off from IMEC in Belgium, based in Leuven, Belgium, and here in Silicon Valley. And we're going to deliver the world's first dynamic holographic display chips.
And I think I saw it first at ITF in Antwerp, at the IMEC summit, and I think there was quite a lot of excitement there, wasn't there?
Oh, well, so glad that it made an impression, and that was our first outing outside of our labs and IMEC. And this was technology that was incubated at IMEC for over 10 years, and the company was founded about a year ago. And it's a photonics breakthrough, but with semiconductor economics, which is a fantastic opportunity, and really making what we've seen in the movies for 50 years come to life and be able to add value to everyday life, as well as how we entertain, work, and communicate.
And I think for the audience, just put a bit of context, because I mean we've just seen the big launch from Apple, and you can tell them sort of what's the context of what you're doing and how that might impact something like that.
Great question. And we're in the midst of this very interesting convergence of the digital and real world, and being able to go ahead and add more value, but doing it in a way that actually behaves the way that in our case the human vision system actually expects things. And holography is the ultimate when it comes to 3D visualization technologies. But up till now, it hasn't been possible to do dynamic holography because it requires diffractive optics, but also a pixel pitch half the wavelength of light. And existing technologies, DLP, LCOS, micro-LED, order of magnitude too large. The clever people at IMEC and now the team at Swave figured out we can use phase change material, in effect, as a pixel. And so we can have the requisite half the wavelength of light pixel pitch, but do it with essentially a CMOS process to be able to fit true holography and being able to have images that are 3D, but so small and such an efficient system that not too long we'll be able to have glasses like the ones you and I are wearing actually be augmented in smart glasses with augmented reality through true holography.
Now, I think you showed me earlier the chip, and it's in a 2 millimeter by 2 millimeter, I think. How many pixels did you say?
64 million.
Okay. So,
2 orders of magnitude, a higher pixel density than anything else out there, but again, on bulk CMOS. And so it's very rare that you have a breakthrough, in this case in photonics, but also a breakthrough with respect to the cost. And that's the exciting, basically, innovation that, started at IMEC, and now, the Swave team is productizing and moving rapidly, to the introduction of our first device and starting to engage with partners and potential customers.
Yeah, and that would be around end of 2024 before we actually see anything.
Essentially, and we're benefiting from 10 years of the fundamental R&D being proven out at IMEC. And being able to now move, quite rapidly. And for a deep tech and semiconductor startup, as usually it takes, many years before you actually
and lots of money,
lots of money. And this is one of the things that maybe is a theme throughout my career, but also, why we're so glad to be associated with an organization like IMEC, who is pioneering so many interesting areas and allows us and our investors now to move rapidly and to deliver on the promise of augmented reality with true holography.
Great. Let's move on to you a little bit. I've known you for a few years. Actually, we both were at National Semiconductor at some point in the 80s. You've had quite a journey. How did you get into the industry?
Well, it's first I'm feel fortunate to be in this industry, and actually I started with another national cash register.
NCR, I remember that.
Exactly,
Yes.
back when every computer company had its own semiconductor division.
Exactly.
And I was one of the first, I think actually the first FAE hired out of university to join NCR Microelectronics, and I was a terrible designer, so of course I taught mixed signal ASIC design. But that really put me on the journey I've been on from FAE and then moving more towards customer facing. And in fact, we're in Santa Clara here today, and 20 years ago I worked for a company just down the road, which was one of the early video compression and video communication companies. And that was a company called 8x8, and so that kind of put me on the path that now has resulted in, back then we were trying to put a video signal down plain old telephone service. Now this is kind of the ultimate extension of that with holography.
And so, you've been in engineering, and then I know you more like over the recent years when I've been with the Times as an investor, entrepreneur. Yeah. Where was that shift?
Yeah, I mean, great question. So from National Semiconductor, I ended up going to NXP and part of the team that spun NXP out of Philips, and then after that had the opportunity to be with Global Foundries. And when I was there, I was elected to the Global Semiconductor Alliance Board of Directors. And back then, and this is the 2013, 2014 timeframe, no one wanted to invest in startups. And this was very concerning to me and my fellow directors. Back then, the investors, venture capitalists in Sand Hill Road treated silicon like plutonium. They didn't want anything to do with it.
Because it was all digital apps. Then.
Exactly. Yeah, they wanted to find the next WhatsApp. And entrepreneurs, and semiconductor entrepreneurs, didn't have a helping hand. So we decided to do something about that. And that's when we formed Silicon Catalyst, the first incubator specifically focused on semiconductor entrepreneurs and startups, and had the good fortune of attracting organizations like IMEC, TSMC, Synopsys, who joined in, and now happy to say Silicon Catalyst is thriving, and that really put me on this journey, moving from the big companies to starting the next generation of companies, and ranging everything from sub-threshold logic to RFSOI for 5G to wide bandgap semiconductors, and now with Swave holography using phase change materials.
Now that still doesn't answer that question of that transition from sort of engineering or engineering management to entrepreneur. Where did that happen?
Well, what I realized early on was, everybody's actually in sales, and either when you're looking to raise money to start up a new company, or you want to get funding for a program. And so I've always had a bit of more of a customer facing, or perhaps go to market focus. But the reality is, in our industry, we're selling to engineers. And so, having at least a little bit of technical credibility from my standpoint, combined with insight in terms of not only how to make money, but build a sustainable business, turned out to be, I guess, a nice combination of skills, and put me on the journey that I've been on, and had the good fortune to engage with what I think is some of those interesting companies and startups that are around, and just a fantastic experience for a kid from Colorado who never dreamed to be in the middle of Silicon Valley, that really now the global Silicon Valley.
Yeah. I think when I first sort of reintroduced myself to you was when you sold a company to Sivers.
That's right.
So that, I can't remember the name of the company, but Mixcom, that's it.
And from Columbia University.
One thing I sort of remember from that interview that I did with you was you always talked about lean, and you've always been involved with companies, chip companies, but lean.
That's right.
And then sort of making sure that you figure out how to make money. So that
precisely. And that I learned from people I worked with and worked for, and had the opportunity actually back in the 8x8 days to work for Joe Parkinson, the man who founded Micron, and he was our CEO at 8x8, and he drilled into me, cash is king, and if you can be frugal, but and invest in what's really important, and the challenge with all high tech, especially startups, is deciding what not to do.
Correct.
And once you do that, everything gets at least easier, and that's been both a philosophy as well as really a business strategy that has served me well, and one of the reasons that we're able to to get funding even in challenging times, because our investors know, because of both track record as well as that mantra, that their investment's going to go and be focused on what the company's setting out to do. And it also keeps us agile, because as you learn, you're able to go ahead and apply that learning without necessarily having to go back and hand in hand and ask for lots more money.
Yeah, and I think we talked about this earlier. You're both super connected and a super connector.
Well, and again, I get invigorated by talking with people like yourself and other entrepreneurs who basically this is the most exciting time to be in the semiconductor business, and especially now that the rest of the world has realized its importance. Yeah. And now that we're using almost the entire periodic table of elements to do interesting things, there's so many things we can do.
And that comes to current. I was at the Design Automation Conference. I think lots of other conferences. And one thing I keep hearing is the how people in the industry are so energized by the fact that semiconductors are so important. But what are going to be our challenges?
Well, it's always been the challenges of technology execution, but now it's really I guess evolved a bit. Because it's more of almost an embarrassment of opportunities, because so much of the semiconductor industry was driven by one application, mainframe going to mini computer to PC to networking to mobile, but now it's every market and really everything you can imagine at its heart has some sort of semiconductor. And so, being able to both focus and understand that application that you're designing into and everything else that goes along with it. But I see, the challenges are actually, far outweighed by both opportunities as well as, the tools that we have at our disposal. And again, now, that countries all around the world are realizing its importance. So it's, should make things easier for entrepreneurs and being able to take their ideas and turning them into, real businesses and real products that, benefit how we live, work, and play.
But I think although the opportunities are wide, what I've learned from you is focus and lean.
Exactly. And so while, there's so many things to do, being able to pick what you're going to do well and how you make money at it and have a sustainable business, that's key. And
right.
The good news is there's so many great examples and now resources like an iMac, like a Silicon Catalyst, and so forth that didn't exist 20 years ago, but do now, and absolutely are encouraging everyone who has an entrepreneur idea or desire to engage with those resources, because they're here to help.
Tommy, now, what's the most fun thing you've done in your career?
Oh, that's a great question. And over my career, I've had opportunities to introduce all sorts of interesting technologies, from the early days of Wi-Fi at NCR to USB camera at 8x8. But honestly, I think the most fun thing I'm doing is what I'm doing right now, because being able to take a technology that is just such an interesting combination of technology that no one ever thought would be could put together and bring to life something that has existed only in the movies for half a century. Nothing can be better than that. So I'm so enjoying it.
And you seem to be everywhere and doing lots of things. Do you ever take a vacation? Where do you go?
Well, there's so much to do, but I tend to think that keeping busy keeps me young, and for me this is lots of fun, and that's what weekends are for. So in any
Silicon Valley, that's what you have, weekends.
Pretty much. But it's all about trying to strive that find that right balance. But right now it's I find it invigorating, and there's 24 hours in the day, so it all works out.
And so then, like on the sort of, again, on the personal basis, what are the things that you would say to the young Mike Noonen who is starting out, knowing what you know now?
Well, it's maybe first
about life and work.
Oh yeah, but and this is what I tell my son: raise your hand and volunteer, because people who have ambition, unless somebody else knows about it, and if you have someone in your particularly your work life who's a mentor, tell them, here, I want to try this. And what I found is just getting involved, always good things happen, and cultivate the network, because it's good karma, but also that's where opportunities come from. And there's always there's so many people, especially in our industry, who want to help and want to be part of something big, and that's something to make the most of.
Well, Mike, thank you very much.
It's always a pleasure, and so nice to chat with you today.
Well, that's good advice. Get involved and good things happen. That brings us to the end of this episode. I'm Nitin Darhad, and see you on the next episode of the Silicon Grapevine.